Hello friends and welcome back to the channel. I'm Nick and this is MSFS Flight Plans. I have got some very big news for you guys. I passed my FAA written exam just a couple days ago. I'll tell you all about that, but I have been just chomping at the bit to get back here in not just a helicopter, but back to the city of LA. If you saw back in 2020, we had 2 flights out here. We were checking out the area by Burbank, checked out an awesome amusement park, all the studios and all that, and then we did I guess central LA, both in a helicopter, but we never came back out here to check out Long Beach and Anaheim, which is where we've got Disneyland and another nice theme park and all kinds of stuff down here at the port of Long Beach, which is what we are surveying right now. Look how beautiful this is. Only drawback, of course, all photogrammetry, but we've got, yep, the dreaded blob trees. This is one area that Bijan has apparently not hit yet. You know how great those areas have looked where he took care of all those. I'm sure he'll get out here eventually because the guy's always updating stuff, but we do have quite a few add-ons installed for this one that are really going to clean up the port. If you don't put them in, this is from our man Freaky D, the port. We haven't seen any of his stuff in a while, and he is probably one of my favorite modders out there and just a really cool guy. If you do not put this add-on in, all of those towers are going to look blocky and really bad. As you're going to see once we get out there, they now look really, really good. And we've got some add-ons from the White Arcade, who did one of the amusement parks out here, which is awesome. He's also a great modder, particularly for amusement parks. He did some of these beaches, so it is going to be a pretty cool trip. Of course, it's all photogrammetry anyway. And I put a post on our community page. I was thinking about taking that new vertical takeoff landing plane from Hangar Studios, but we had not yet taken a helicopter out in a big city area with the 5090. So I figured we'd hop back in the Hiller again and fly out here just so we can see how well it's performing both in LA and in a helicopter. And someone told me after that last flight out to that huge statue out in India, you remember I was commenting about how look how the center is set up here. So you got the guy on the left, which might or might not be the main co-pilot, but one of our members who I think actually flies them said that you actually sit in the center as the pilot, and then the co-pilot would be sitting on the left-hand side, and then the passenger is over there on your right if you're facing out the front window, where Will is sitting right now. So we're going to take this flight from the center seat, which is pretty cool. We'll be able to see pretty well out both sides. Of course, the field of view is amazing in this. And just look at it. The whole thing looks amazing. So beautiful. So let's hop in, and then I'll show you the map real quick, and then we'll get on our way. So let me go ahead and put my controller down, and we'll climb in real quick after I click back on the screen. And let me scroll my notes up real quick. There we go. Just get that ready. Let's look at little nav map real quick. Will, how you doing? We'll be nice and close for this trip. Look at that, just straddling the thing. But you know what's neat, I guess it's neat, is that because there's a console in the middle with your control levers there, the stick is offset to the right just a little bit, which is kind of interesting. It would be right between your legs if you were sitting in the left-hand seat. So that's that. Let's take a look at our map real quick. So the whole trip is going to be about 50 miles. Let's zoom out just a little bit. I'm sure everyone on Earth probably knows where LA is, and we're starting right down here, down by the water at the port of Long Beach. And this is the port of Los Angeles. We'll check out both of those things. So we're going to come up here, check out the RMS Queen Mary will be our first location, and I was going to take off from this helipad right here, or heliport. I'll mention it when we fly by it. But this is one of the ones that was done up by LifeNet, and he is the guy that made all of those awesome scenes that we were flying when we were doing our helicopter practices. He came out here and did this one too. There's not any car wrecks or fires or anything like that, but it looks pretty cool. These were all made for 2020. In 2024, it got a little bit jacked up. And I even sent him a message and told him we were going to fly this again before I really got a close-up look at it. There's just a couple floating vehicles and stuff that are down here. Works totally fine. You can take off from it just fine, but we'll fly by it in the air because it looks great from the air. You can't see any of the floating stuff. I'm sure it looks perfectly fine in 2020. But in 2024, we had some floating stuff, but I left it in there, and I'll link it in case you're flying in 2020 or just want this area to look particularly good in 2024. That will be linked in the video description, along with all of the add-ons that we'll be using for this one, and I think there was probably 6 or so. None of them were real huge, but all of them made a very big difference. And of course, this flight plan will also be linked. So we'll cruise out here, come down here, check out the port. I mean, this is a massive area. Look at this. And Freaky D got most of the containers up off the ground. Most of them have relief. There's just a couple of flat spots where you'll see photographic containers. I don't fault him for that at all. You really have to be looking for them, and I don't blame them for not doing every single container out here. Look at all this stuff. But he got all of the cranes and everything. Just looks fantastic. So we'll cruise out here. There's a couple of very interesting landmarks out here. We've got a museum ship out there that I'll tell you about, a place called the Sunken City, which sounds really neat and has an interesting story behind it. And our one fort for this trip will be Fort MacArthur, and because I'm not sure if we'll see it from the air, I'll just mention it here. We'll definitely be able to see these old cannon batteries here, but there's also a Nike missile battery. They've made a museum out of this somewhere down in here. I spotted the landmark for that on the Google map. You can't see it here in the little nav map, which would be Mapbox. The USS Iowa, when we fly over it, is the only, hesitate to even call it an error that we'll see out here. When we fly by this, it's going to be magenta colored, and I'm pretty sure Freaky D is aware of it because some people made mention of it in the comments, and I'm guessing because he was not able to remedy it, there might not be a way to remedy it in 2024, but if you do not put the add-on in, there will be nothing down there, which is kind of interesting. You can see it on all the maps. It's partially submerged on the Google map, and even in the sim too. If you zoom in and you don't have the add-on in, it'll show it, but it's partially submerged. But when I flew it, I didn't see it at all, so I'm not sure what's going on with that. So we'll check that out, cruise over here, see what should be the aquarium. Interesting anomaly about that. A little arena they've got out here. Then we'll fly in between Long Beach Airport and the Los Alamitos Army Air Station, Army Airfield, and then cruise up here to Knott's Berry Farm. This is the one that was done up by the White Arcades. Looks absolutely amazing. Go down here and check out Disneyland, and then Angel Stadium Honda Center. Come down here, check out a very cool landmark right down here, and then come into John Wayne Airport. Whole trip will probably be 30, 35 minutes maybe. Again, only 53 or so miles in the air, so not real far. Okay, it's been a while since I've flown anything, never mind a helicopter, so we'll see how we do with this. And I've noticed one thing about this one, and this is not the live weather, it's a little bit hazy out here right now, so we've got about this is one of the presets, I got about a 6-knot crosswind. But one thing I'm noticing about this now, which you'll see in just a second, which I did not notice on the India flight, but maybe I was not paying much attention, is when I bring that collective up, it's going to start pulling back. I was having trouble getting it into a hover. Well, this time it's going forward, so maybe we got some different wind. Let's see if I can just get this thing in a hover just for the fun of it, just because it's been a while. If not, I won't mess with it, as we don't have time to fool around with it. Oh, it's going to be tough. It's going to be tough. And you know the physics are a little bit weird when you're on top of platforms anyway. There we go. We're pretty close there. All right, not too bad. We'll say we did it. Check it off our list. And I think that bridge, for some reason, if I was observing correctly in the sim map, is a point of interest. Not sure what the big deal is with that because it looks like a regular old bridge. But it is what it is. Okay, first thing coming up here on the right is the iconic RMS Queen Mary that sailed from 1936 to 1967. And now it is a hotel, museum, and convention center. Not really sure what that big thing on the right is, that big hump. But I think it's part of the cruise terminal. Without the add-on pack, there is a cruise ship over there. Both the cruise ship and the Queen Mary don't look great. They're really shadowed, but I guess Freaky D did up the Queen Mary because it looks fantastic here. Very nice touch, and thank you, as always, to Mamie Design for the marinas because those look fantastic too. Let me see if I can click that and make it disappear. There we go. We will need to point at a few things. So see all these islands in front of us? That one to the left, right at the end of the breakwater there, is called Gus Grissom Memorial Island, and they've got 3 more out ahead of us. And I was trying to figure out what the deal with those things were. I think they are some sort of oil facilities or something, because most of them have big tanks on them these days, but there don't appear to be any places for ships to pull up to them. So I forgot to look and see what they're actually doing with those, but they look like oil facilities. Let's just pivot a little bit here, take a look at the Queen Mary. And then down there to the right, I got my hands on the controls, so I guess maybe I won't do as much pointing as I was thinking that I would. Right on the inside of our little bar there in front of Will, you can see those 2 helipads. That is the LifeNet add-on area where you can start if you put the add-on in, or even if you don't. I think they still are marked in the sim. And from here, you can tell, looks great. That bus down there on the other side of him is floating a little bit if you're right down there on the ground, but looks wonderful from here. And let's see if we can get a look at the Queen Mary while we're here, or did I already turn too far? Looks good. What do you think, Will? You just going to ignore it like it's not even there? Oh, they got like a little basketball court or something down there? What is that? All right, let's check out the port here. But during World War II, the Queen Mary served as a troop carrier for the Allies, setting a record for the most people to ever travel on board a ship. Ever. With a miserable 16,600 souls on board in 1943. A record still yet to be broken. Now look at this dock area here. Just fantastic. The baseline photogrammetry is not the best we've seen. You can see the stuff that Freaky D didn't touch up. Still looks a little bit jagged from this altitude, but looks way, way, way better than it does without it. So definitely put that in there. Let's pitch forward just a little bit so we can pick up some forward speed here. All the cranes look amazing. Just really nice. So this is the port of Long Beach here. Out ahead of us is the port of Los Angeles. And collectively, these are the largest, most busiest ports in the United States. I think they've got over 100 cranes working out here. And in the whole area, they employ more than 1 million people working down here at the docks. But despite all those people, it is still regarded as one of the most inefficient ports in the world, thanks to the unions that are preventing them from doing any kind of automation. So I don't know if that's a good or bad thing. I guess great because a lot of people still have jobs, but not so great because it probably costs a lot more to move stuff through here. Paying all those folks. Just look at this. What an incredible area. It's later in the afternoon now. The sun is not rising. It is in the process of setting. You can see the cars driving around down there. Just really beautiful. And buttery smooth performance with all this stuff turned on. I did drop the train level of detail down to about 250 from where I had it last time at 300, just because it didn't seem to make a visual difference. Because I was getting a little bit of stuttering at some parts of it. Not a big deal though. Alright, let me see if I can switch hands. If we can just kind of keep cruising around here and I can stay relatively stable. And I'm not seeing, for some reason, little nav map is not tracking my helicopter, which is fine. I know where we're going. So they move about 20 million containers through this place each year, which is just crazy. And it sits on an area called San Pedro Bay, which was just a giant mud flat when first discovered by the Portuguese in 1542. Which is kind of interesting because most of these coastal areas out here in California have cliffs. But this one was just a big muddy basin. And so for quite a while, they were either having to ferry goods back, once people actually started coming out here and living out here. They would either have to anchor way offshore and then ferry goods back and forth, or just beach their ships, which I'm sure was probably less preferable to the inefficiency of ferrying stuff. Look at that train down there, wrapping all the way around there. That is just crazy. But they started dredging it out in 1871. And then the railroads took over in the early 1900s, and they're the ones that really got stuff going out here. And by the end of the 1920s, it had surpassed San Francisco as the busiest port on the West Coast. How great does this look, guys? It makes such a difference. Just seeing the more vibrant colors with the add-on. The detail, obviously, is a huge improvement. Just looks so nice. I think the cruising speed on this is probably between 80 and 100 knots, but we're not in a real rush because we're just soaking all this in. Just looks gorgeous. And I think I kind of like it with the extra shadows with the sun setting a bit more too. I notice there's not a vertical speed indicator in this, so I'm just kind of watching my altimeter to track how we're doing. Yep, you can see down below the cranes there, we got some flat stuff. You can see there's probably a container ship that's partially submerged in the water, but you really have to look for it. If you're just kind of skimming the area or flying a bit higher, you wouldn't notice any of it. And those ships in port down there just look superb. There's the Iowa over there. See the purple thing off there in the distance? Throw a little window, we'll fly over the top of that so you can get a better look at it. In just a minute, we'll see one lone ship tied up to a pier down to our right, which is dead ahead of us right now. And that is the SS Lane Victory, which is now a museum ship. And that was a cargo ship launched in 1945, completing just 2 cruises before the war ended, but saw quite a bit more action during the Korean War in Vietnam. Let's see, it's dead ahead of us right behind our center bar, so we'll swing over this way just a little bit and fly over it. They sailed her out here in 1988, and she is now serving as a merchant marine exhibit. And since it's still seaworthy, it's been used in several Hollywood hits, including, most interesting to me anyway, the Titanic. In the movie The Titanic, or Titanic, it wasn't called The Titanic, they used it to film the wakes from the Titanic, because it can still sail, which is kind of interesting. I don't know what part of the movie that it was in, but that's what they were using it for. And they also used it in The Thin Red Line, G.I. Jane, a couple other movies I definitely heard of. I don't know what parts of the films they were filming it in, but look at that. It just looks gorgeous. I don't know how interesting a merchant marine ship would be, but that's what they're using it for. Okay, right along the coastline, this furthest coastline on this point up ahead is the Sunken City. And that is a cliffside area that's now closed to the public, but was some of the best real estate in town when they developed it in the 1920s for residential stuff. But in 1927, they had a landslide that dropped about 40,000 square feet. Sorry, that was 1929. 40,000 feet slid right into the ocean. So now they got it closed down to the public, although they said no one is obeying the ordinance to not go out there. Said a lot of locals and tourists like to climb out there. And if we look real close when we fly by, we should be able to see some of the old foundations. We'll see if we can get a little bit closer here. Look at these little boats out here. And I really can't see if there are any geometric trees out there from the photogrammetry. Looks great. All right, let me grab my pointer. So this is the sunken city right down here, and you can just see some of the foundations here. Obviously, these didn't fall into the water, but I saw some pictures of it. And they've got little, like, pedestals of land with some foundations still sitting on top of them in real life, which is pretty neat. You can see the foundation right there. You see that? Pretty cool, huh? Will, just look at it. Come on. How many times are you going to be out here? Whatever, dude. And then all of that stuff up there behind it used to be Fort MacArthur. And now the only thing that is left of the fort, as I was showing you on that map, is this area up right here. And we can still see some of the cannon stations. And I'm going to see if we can see anything that looks like a Nike missile site. Not that I would know what that looks like. You see, this is what most of the coastline of California looks like. Very cliffy. But not back there by San Pedro Bay. So let's see. We got cannon batteries here, and another one over here, and I guess the Nike missile site would have been right about here. They built that up before World War II and put a bunch of giant naval guns in there, which really pissed off the locals because every time they were firing those things off for test shots, they said it would shatter the windows of houses for miles in every direction, so they pulled all those out after World War II. And now, as you can see, it's mostly residential stuff. They kept this part as a little museum. Look at that. You can see a little tunnel going back in there behind the cannon batteries. Very cool. Well, at least we got to see one fort out here. Beggars can't be choosers. All right, so I'm just going to aim right for the Iowa right now, which you can see right behind our center pillar, and see what we can see despite it being that magenta color. So this was the last class of, I don't know if this was the last battleship made, but it was the last class of battleships that were made, boasting the largest guns on any of the ships. I think some of the others had the same types of guns, but they were 16-inch cannons, which is pretty good size. They could hurl a shell for 20 miles, and of course it's just bristling with all kinds of other smaller cannons and anti-aircraft guns and things like that. Look at this marina down here. Really just flawless. I don't know if you guys, if you haven't, you should go back and check it out, but the jitteriness and shakiness when I was using my 3090 card out here in a helicopter and having to turn everything so far down, I mean, this is just silky smooth. So the old Iowa was commissioned in '43 and earned 11 battle stars during her time at sea. And she's been sitting here at berth 87 as what must be an awesome battleship museum since 2012. That thing saw lots of action. Man, it's just too bad it's that color. And this bridge behind it, I didn't write down the name of it. It looks really, really nice. Well, this might wind up being longer than a 30-minute trip. I feel like I need to go a little bit slower just to soak it all in and make sure I tell you guys about everything. That tanker looks great. Look at all the little trawlers and stuff they got down there. Little tiny bit of jaggedness on some of those petrol containers down there. Not a big deal at all, but there's filth on top of them, which is, of course, something I love. Big cruise ship terminal down here. I think the Iowa used to be where that cruise ship is now, and they had to move it down just a little bit. You can definitely tell it's a battleship, can't you? I don't know anything about doing design work like this, so I don't know what would cause that one thing to be doing that, but it's too bad. I bet that's frustrating freaky D to no end. Cruise ship looks good. All right, let me get my bearings here. We need to come back around this way over here. This bridge looks really great, so let's take a little look at that. So the bridge, I believe, was done by the White Arcade. I think Freaky D gave a nod to him in his post for that. And if you have any other ports from Freaky D, he usually requires this one as a supplement. So I think a lot of the elements in this one are reused in a lot of his other ports. Look at that big rail yard down there with all those rusty trains and everything. This looks amazing. I'm trimming down just a little bit here so we can pick up some speed now. Dirt looks good. This is just awesome. Oh, guys, I can't tell you how much bliss I am enjoying right now, being able to run this smoothly. That's my kind of train yard right there. Look at all those cars. And regular cars. Passenger cars down there. I wonder if there's really that much traffic way out here. I mean, because there's only be dock employees, I would think, driving out this way. All right, our first strange anomaly is going to be what should be the Aquarium of the Pacific. It looks nothing like it does in real life here in the sim, and I have no idea why. It's going to be right in the heart of all this photogrammetry here, but it just came out looking like a default building for some reason. The footprint's about right, and some of the stuff outside of the main building look right, but for some reason, the aquarium does not. And look at this bridge here. I mean, that's a lot of work to put into a bridge that is just coming into a dock, but I guess they have to build it high enough to be able to drive those big ships underneath it. Looks good. Not a flawless transition onto the regular road, but again, awesome work. I don't know if you could make a flawless transition because the color difference is there. So this right here is the aquarium. And if you looked at it right over the top, you might think it's pretty close, but if you look at anything from the sides, and you can even kind of see on the satellite maps, it's not right for some reason. I don't know what happened with that, or why it's not photogrammetry with everything else, but it is what it is. And then this thing up here is, back behind it, is the Long Beach Arena. Most interesting thing about that is a giant mural on the side of it with a bunch of huge whales. And the artist came back in the 2000s and drew a big, or painted a big atlas on the top of it. And in the Bing map, it was very, very faint, barely visible. So we'll see if we can make out any of the continental shapes on that as we zip by here. And that's a big convention center down here, and a performing arts center over here. I think this is just a multi-purpose place. I don't think they have any professional athletic teams playing in it right now. And there's that Gus Grissom Island again. So we took off right behind Will's head right now. Let's see if we can see the world on top of this thing here. I'm trying to maintain my altitude while holding the mouse with one hand and my cyclic with the other. Oof. Barely, barely, barely. You wouldn't be able to make it out, but when we're done, I'll show you on the little nav map what it looks like. So look at this. I mean, they got a big, flat, huge beach right here, which probably all used to be mud back in the day. All right, let me get myself figured out since I'm not tracking a little nav map here and make sure we're pointing in the right direction. There's the big airport. That's what I'm looking for. That's Long Beach Airport over there. So speaking of battles, the most harrowing incident in the history of this city was the Battle of Los Angeles, which occurred on the evening of February 24th, 1942. Just a few months after the bombing of Pearl Harbor and fearing an assault of the mainland, a case of war nerves gripped every single anti-aircraft battery in the city, which fired nearly 1,500 shells into the night sky. And once the smoke settled, it turned out that it wasn't the Japanese after all. In fact, no one is really sure what, if anything, was up there, which I think we can all most likely attribute to aliens. You know it was aliens. Look at all those houses down there. Man, what a congested city. I have never been to Los Angeles. I've never been to any city with this much population density. I mean, I've been to Manhattan, but that's all kind of jammed into one tiny little area. And vertically, this is just people for miles and miles and miles in every direction. The closest big city to me, probably Atlanta. Even Orlando's pretty spread out. Tampa's kind of tightly packed. Miami's a pretty big area, but not like this. So real quick shout out again to all the modders that did this stuff. Mr. Coffee, again, thank you so much for all of the water fixes you do all over the place. Freaky D, so glad we finally got back to one of your spots again. And I will need to give no accolades, though he definitely deserves them, to the White Arcade once we get out to Knott's Berry Farm. It just looks superb. Over here on the right, in just a second, you see this pyramid over here? This is the Cal State Long Beach campus, and this is called the Walter Pyramid out here, and that's where their men's and women's basketball and volleyball team plays. I've never seen anything like that, and it definitely stands out, which is pretty cool, isn't it? Not super, super huge. I think each side of it is about 350 feet and maybe about 150 feet high, but definitely unique looking and a good VFR marker if you're trying to fly your way around here. I don't see a big football field or anything, so I don't know where the main Cal State campus is, now that I'm thinking about it. I bet one of you from California probably knows that. Boy, we're just high enough now that you can't see any of the photogrammetry trees. This is a perfect elevation, so roughly 2,000 feet or so. There's that pyramid, which looks like it might be a little bent on the side, but I think that's just the way the light's hitting it, because once we get closer, it'll look more like a pyramid. That's pretty wild, isn't it? Only seats about 4,000 people, though. So a lot of effort for a relatively small capacity, I would think. Don't look at it, Will. Do not look at it. Very cool. Okay, we've got another small airport coming up here. This is the Los Alamitos Army Airfield. And that opened in 1941 after more than a decade of the military trying to convince the city of Long Beach to do a better job of maintaining their airport, which is... Well, I can't turn my head enough. The head tracker's not turned that far. That's the Long Beach airport back there. They were sharing it with the military for a while. And the military kept asking them to please just maintain the runways, and they refused to do it and wouldn't let them lease. The city wouldn't let them lease land anywhere else, so they bought this from a lady that owned a bunch of land out here. After the military convinced them that it was kind of important that they let them continue operations out here because they generated back in the 1940s about $1 million a year in income to the people that were working for the military out here. So I guess the city said, okay, fine, build another airport. And there it is over there. Just on this side of it, they've got a race course out here, and there was something interesting about that. I don't know much about horse racing, but let me just get down here and see what the deal was. So that's the Los Alamitos race course. That opened in 1951, so I guess just a little while after they opened the airport. Let's pitch down a little bit here, pick up some speed. They got some parks down here to our left that had a couple of historic buildings that you really can't see from here in the sim, so I didn't make notes about what they were, but they got some golf courses and stuff down there. And I'm sure parks are a pretty nice feature out here where there's nothing but urban jungles everywhere. But this race course out here, its claim to fame, which is going to be right here, it's pretty good size. The parking lot's pretty small, so I don't know how much business they get. And it looks like the little grandstand is really just this area right here, but you'll be able to see it. We're getting a little bit of popping as we come over here. But no stuttering. This is the race course here, so pretty good size. But their claim to fame is that it's the only track in the U.S. that holds 4 quarter-horse stakes with purses of over $1 million. And again, I don't know anything about racing, so I don't know if that's a big deal or not. But if you're into it, maybe that is a big deal. Look at this population. I can't even imagine. This thing down to our left is one of the water channels to prevent flooding out here. That's not one of the freeways. And that one looks pretty clear. They said a lot of them out here have trees and mud and stuff growing out of them. We saw some of those up by Burbank that had some stuff growing out of them. I'm really liking this time of day too. Looks real good. You see that? I think the only parking area for this race course out here, and again, I don't know how many people are usually coming to events like this, but that appears to be the only grandstand area for the whole thing. Oh, they could probably do some good plane spotting from here. It looks like the only aircraft I could spot when I took the airport, covering off in little nav map since we weren't landing there, was helicopters. So not really sure what they're doing out here. They had a couple of pretty small planes, but no fighters or anything. Okay, up next, which you can see off to our left, is Knott's Berry Farm, which started life in the 1920s as just that. It was a roadside berry stand run by Walter and Cordelia Knotts. They later added a small restaurant which attracted so many customers, I guess they were serving chicken dinners down there, that they started building up some shops and minor attractions to keep the diners busy while they waited for a table. And then in 1940, they built a replica ghost town, and the next thing you know, they had a legit theme park on their hands. Today, the park sits on 57 acres, thrilling roughly 4 million visitors a year, who can come enjoy more than 40 rides on the property. And I read it's now owned by Six Flags, though I don't know exactly how that happened. I think Six Flags bought another company that originally bought it from the family. Once the parents died, the kids didn't want to deal with it anymore, so they sold it to Cedar Hill or something like that, which I think was acquired by Six Flags. And kind of interestingly, it sounds like this place was initially a conservative bastion out here on the left coast, appealing to conservative values with their traditional down-home throwback vibe. And I read the only reason they started charging admission in the 1960s was because they were getting sick and tired of all the homeless hippies that were just loitering around the place. So apparently that did the trick. I'm going to slow down a little bit, and I'm going to come down a little bit because this is so well done. I want to give you guys a nice close-up look at this thing. And then right over here is a little water park that they built in 2000. But this was not part of the add-on. This part here is, you can tell by the different coloration, so we'll get a nice close pass of that. And when I was looking on their website, I counted, well, actually the Wikipedia had like a little score for each of the rides, like a thrill meter. And the highest level on the thrill meter was 5, which is classified as very aggressive. And they had 9 rides that qualified as very aggressive. So if you're into that kind of thing and you're out here in the area, come on down to Knott's Berry Farm and check it out. I don't think people talk with a southern draw out here, though. They have the, long word endings. Knott's Berry Farm? I think they call it up-talking, which for some reason really irritates me. Ride a roller coaster? Throw up? Look at this place. Okay, so there's a little water park there on the right. And let's just get real close. This is one of those, if you come to a default, even if it's in photogrammetry, maybe even particularly if it's photogrammetry, you know how all these roller coasters look. All of the struts and everything are all filled in underneath. This just looks flawless. We're going to circle around here and come around back on the south side of it. So we got a huge wooden roller coaster there. Looks like some kind of probably drop tower there in the middle sticking out, that blue thing. Look how great that looks. White Arcades, you officially win the Nick Award for best looking theme parks. All of them that you've done look fantastic. They really, really do. And I'm surprised no one did up Disneyland out here. As you're going to see, it's photogrammetry. It doesn't look too bad. They don't have a lot of huge coasters like this, so all the scaffolding and stuff, there aren't many rides that have that, because you know they like to build everything into the scenery. Look at how good that looks. Yes, the vibrant colors don't really match the landscape, but I love it. I love it. Love every bit of it. So there's something there in the middle that's kind of going in and out of a mountain. Their version of Big Thunder Mountain, maybe. Yep, they got the American flag out there. I'm surprised that hadn't been burned down with all these riots out here lately. Big Mexican flag blowing around on the top of it. That just looks so good. Great work. All right, let's zip around here, and then this is going to be the hard part, trying to find Disney World without being able to track it on a little nav map. I think I can roughly remember where it is, or Disneyland out here, not Disney World. It's over in that direction, so I'm just going to head over there. We'll pick up the big interstate and then follow that down there by it. And let me actually see, I'm just kind of moving around a little nav map here on the left as I do this to try to track. Okay, so we're going to head about this way. Okay, yeah, we won't miss Disneyland. It's by the big convention center. We won't miss that. You actually see that a little bit easier than Disneyland. And we'll go ahead and see if we can pick this baby up to max cruise speed, because we got a little bit of a hike coming over there. While we're cruising over there, I will tell you about my FAA exam, which I sat for Friday, now 2 nights ago. Went in there very nervous. I figured I would definitely get a passing grade, which, as I mentioned on previous videos, is only a 70. But as I also mentioned on those other videos, any area that you get wrong warrants extra scrutiny when you do your check ride and with your instructor, so I was really not wanting to get a lot wrong. I sat down there expecting 60 questions, expecting most of them to look very similar to what I was seeing on the Sporty's ground school that I was using for that. And a lot of them were pretty close. There were 3 of them that not only had I never seen, but had absolutely no idea. I was able to make some educated guesses on that. But when I got to the end of the test, to number 60, they asked me 3 more questions, so I assume they were probably running some, trial questions through it. To see what they're going to add in the future. I'm just scanning the area for Disney World, because if I don't spot this, we're going to miss it. So I think we're heading in the right direction. I wound up getting a 100 on it, which I was surprised. I thought I'd probably be in the 90s, but I aced it, which is really good news, which means I don't have to worry about getting extra scrutiny on anything. Really fantastic. So for those of you that are thinking about getting your PPL, if you're wanting to know what went into at least getting through that first hurdle of passing that written exam, I'd have to go back to the videos to figure out the exact date that I started studying for that, but I would say it was probably 3 months from the time I got going until now, and I got a whole bunch of books from the flight school, the local flight school, and the main one that I used was the Pilot's Handbook of Aeronautical Knowledge, and then I ordered a set of flashcards from, what is that, Pilot Academy, I think it is, that website, which was fantastic, and then made my own flashcards, and that was about it. And then using the Sporties, that was enough to do it. The one thing that I found that I was kind of stymied by as I was leaving, I would say 30 to 40% of them were almost verbatim with the study material. Now granted, there's 1,000 questions as you go through the study material, but I was wondering how they get so many of them verbatim, because they make it very clear on the front end that if you tell anyone about anything on the tests, you could lose your license, be disqualified, all kinds of things. And they said don't talk to anyone, don't answer any questions if anyone asks you what was on the test. And it's not like Sporty's called me or wrote me or anything and asked if what I saw on the test. So I don't know how they're getting those so close, but somehow they are. So it was worth it. Sporty's about $300 for that. If you just really want to bone up on the information required to be a pilot, even if you're not planning on being a pilot and you have $300 to burn, I'd say do it. Okay, so here we are at Disneyland, and they have quite a substantial parking area. This is all the convention center over here, and then this is Disneyland over here. This was the original, the OG. Opened in the 1950s, and the only of all the Disney projects that was directly supervised by Walt himself. And at 500 acres, it is quite a bit larger than its counterpart, which I guess we would say, I mean, it's not as big as all of the Disney complex in Orlando, which is just massive. But if you compare it to the Magic Kingdom, which is pretty similar, they even have a lot of the same rides. The Magic Kingdom is only about 111 acres, I think, and this is 500 acres. So that's a lot. I didn't realize this was that big. Again, compared to the whole Disney expanse in Orlando, not that big, but just for all the rides and everything they've jammed in here, that's quite a bit. One thing that is quite a bit smaller out here, though, is the Sleeping Beauty Castle, which I'm going to try really hard to spot for us. This one's only 77 feet high. The one in Orlando is almost 200 feet high. Well, that roller coaster right there looks pretty good, doesn't it? And the Ferris wheel? I mean, for photogrammetry, that looks really good. You can actually see through the scaffolding down there in the bottom. That's unheard of. Okay, let me try to navigate around here. Look at all this parking they got, though. Can you imagine what the traffic's like down here? That was weird. All right, so let's see what we got going on here. So here's Space Mountain. What is going on? Okay, Space Mountain and... Okay, hopefully they'll just stop doing that. What I'm looking at is this thing right here. I don't know what that is, but the castle is right here. It is so small you can just barely see it. If you don't have a big screen or you're watching on the phone, forget about it. But if you want to try to find it, look for whatever that little sombrero-looking thing is right there, and there's the castle. You know what? While we're out here, why the heck not? Let's get out. Let's see how close we can get and see if it actually looks like a castle. Let's just trim her up a little bit so we don't do a face plant. Space Mountain looks like Space Mountain. You can't miss that. My daughter and her boyfriend just went down to Disney Orlando. They got the annual pass for Florida residents, which was actually a great deal, where you can just go as many times as you want, with the exception of the blackout dates, which aren't that many. Ooh, that shadow might be a problem because of the way the sun's setting. But they said they got some cool new rides down there. Rode Space Mountain, and Space Mountain was that was one of the original rides out here. That was old 30 years ago when I was going to Disney all the time. There's the castle. It really doesn't look much like a castle, does it? Look at that. See it right there? Hard to tell it's a castle. I'm surprised they haven't rebuilt that. My favorite ride was always Splash Mountain, which apparently was too racist to maintain in the Brer Rabbit style, which it probably was. But they kept the actual slide itself. It's one of those flume rides, and it's the only ride in all of Disney, at least in the Magic Kingdom and Epcot, where you can lose your stomach on it. That big drop they have. But now it's a Moana ride. Nice and wholesome. Okay, so we'll circle around here. I gotta cut back up inside. I think I'm having a little problem with my head tracker. It looks like if I look too far to the left, we're getting that flash, so I'll try not to do that. Alright, bring that collective up. And then we'll cruise over here and look at the Angel Stadium, and then we'll be heading on into John Wayne. I'll see if we can land this thing. Something kind of funny going on with the top of this convention center here. It looks pretty good right now with all those solar panels on the top, but look what's going to happen as we get closer. All these rectangles that kind of look like containers placed on the roof will start appearing. Boy, I'm a pretty big fan of how this came out for photogrammetry for a theme park. A lot of geometric trees there, but the theme park itself looks pretty dang good. Oh, I did it again. I looked over the left. Sorry about that, guys. I'm not redoing the flight just for that, although I'm awfully tempted to. Okay, so we should see the stadium as we circle around over here. There it is right over there. Awesome. Yeah, look at this. What are these things showing up on top of that? Weird, huh? Okay, the stadium up here, which you can now see coming into view off our nose to the left, is another creation of Freaky D. I didn't see what it looked like without that on there, but it looks really good with it in there. And that opened in 1965, making it the fourth oldest still in operation ballpark in the U.S., behind Wrigley Field, Fenway, and Dodger Stadium. If you saw our Orlando flight a long, long time ago, I have been to Fenway many, many times back when I lived in Connecticut. Absolutely loved it. Looked a little bit different than it does now. They built up some more stands and stuff up on top of the Green Monster. It was just naked when I was out there. And I saw a few people crank it over the top of it, like out of the stadium. That was back in the days of Wade Boggs. First baseball card I ever bought. Wade Boggs rookie card. And promptly lost pretty much all of its value. And the LA Rams played out here for a while too. I forgot about that when they were in town. And back behind it there, you can just see right along that little water channel there is the Honda Arena, Honda Center, home to the Anaheim Ducks hockey team. And they opened that in 1993, which is making me feel kind of old because I remember very well when the Ducks hit the scene. But look at this stadium. That is pretty much spot on with what it looks like in real life, too. See the scoreboards down there? It looks awesome. Oh, look at that. They got the little Angels thing out in the parking lot there. That looks fantastic and really blends well with that parking lot. And you almost don't even know it's an add-on. That looks so good. The color matching is just perfect. Wow. That's great. I wonder what that oblong shape thing is. See that there? Just in the corner of our window? What the heck is that? All right, one of you that lives out here, let me know what that thing is. That other dome-shaped thing there before the Honda Center. Okay, one more landmark until we head on into John Wayne. And this one is real easy to spot because you'll see these two giant hangars up here in the distance. There's one of them, and we might need to get a little bit closer for the other one to pop into view. This is a huge mall right here. Also looks great. Yep. Wow. Really, really looks good. Everything looks good. So this is the place where the blimp hangars are, is the former site of Marine Corps Air Station Tustin, which was designed to be a blimp base in 1942. They built it for coastal patrols out here during the war. And it's been closed for years now, but we should be able to see... Yeah, we got both hangars up there now. But that's rapidly disappearing. The whole thing is. The one closest to us burned down a couple years ago, and I think the other one is in a state of disrepair. I think they're trying to do something to maybe preserve the other one, because as you're going to see, they're absolutely massive. But on the Google Maps, it's no longer there. I think that one burned down in 2023, so fairly recently. But when you look at the Google Maps, here in Little Nav Map, when we check it out, it still looks pretty open, but on the Google Maps, you can tell they're already converting a lot of it to residential and commercial stuff, because that's a lot of open real estate that can make somebody a lot of money, despite having two awesome, huge blimp hangars out there. I didn't get the dimensions of that thing, but I bet they are gigantic. I think they were using the one that didn't burn down for a movie set for a while, maybe both of them, before the first one caught fire. And they said once they got out there, they just kind of let the thing burn because it was so dangerous. And there was some concerns about asbestos getting released into the environment too. Just a gorgeous area. Look at all these hills and everything out here. Just lovely, aside from all the people and the riding. I could do without that. So my first actual flight will be tomorrow on Monday, depending on when I load this up. And then I'm flying again on Tuesday. Diving right into it. As far as the channel, which is the reason why I'm going over there and doing that, the other YouTube channel that we'll be doing that will be documenting a lot of that, we had filmed our first and second attempts in the hangar with his Cub as the backdrop. He's got a J3 Cub, and he just got a brand new one, which is even better than the first one, if you can believe that. Well, brand new, 1940s version. I guess you could say he traded it. But it was so hot, so hot. I was just sweating to death. Of course, it's not air-conditioned. And it's a working hangar at a working airport right next to a freeway, so I'm just keeping an eye on where the airport is over there. He is in partnership with the mechanic at the airport, which is also awesome because we're going to get to see all kinds of other planes that he's working on and stuff. And the guy's got some space he is going to let us use to have an indoor studio, which is great, which is why there's been a bit of a delay with that. We got to build it out just a little bit because, of course, it's just filled with airplane parts right now, which would be pretty cool, but we got to give it a little bit of soundproofing and stuff, or there'll be echoes. So I'll probably start working on that tomorrow, which has just set us back a couple weeks, but once those videos start coming up, I'll get those up for you. And we're going to put some GoPros in the cockpit when I'm flying around so we can get some B-roll footage for all that. Try to document as much of it as we possibly can. There's a little high school down there. The field looks fantastic. And look at these huge blimp hangars over here. Also look pretty true to life. John Wayne Airport, which is dead ahead of us, was not always called that, but that started life as a flight school back in the early 1920s. And by the way, the Long Beach Airport, I forgot to mention it, that was opened by a guy that was, I think it's called Doherty Field. It was opened by a guy in the early 1900s, and I think in 1919 he created a flight school down there, which is regarded as the first flight school in the world. Kind of important, and I should have mentioned that, but I'm glad I remembered to mention it. Yeah, Doherty Field is what the other name for that is, other than Long Beach Airport. So when we look at the Google map at the end, all that open space there on the other side of it has already been, they got like a Lowe's down there and a bunch of residential neighborhoods they started building up. But John Wayne himself lived down at Newport Beach, which is just on the other side of the airport down there by the water, so they renamed it John Wayne in honor of the Duke while he was still alive. What a great honor. And of particular note for us aviation fans, this is the place where Harrison Ford accidentally landed his Husky on a taxiway in 2017. He was trying to come in on that shorter runway on the left and landed on the taxiway to the left, taxiway Charlie. I think that's runway 20 left, and he came in right over the top of an airliner that was holding short and plopped down over there. And I was able to find the ATC chatter and some video footage and the tape of his call to the air traffic control after they said he had a possible pilot deviation. Probably a little bit more than possible. But if you listen to the whole thing, I'll link that in the video description too if you want to check it out if you haven't heard it. And Harrison Ford kind of talks a little bit slow nowadays anyway, but he sounded like, I don't want to make accusations. I'll let you be the judge of that. But if you don't want to wait all the way to the end of the 15-minute thing, his call to ATC was pretty chill. The ATC traffic is kind of interesting, but basically they just called and said, hey, we got to report you. You'll probably get a call from the FSDO. Here's the number. And that was the end of that. So just watch the first 10 minutes of that if you're curious. But in looking at it, I don't know how you make a mistake like that because the runway has a giant 20 on it, and the other one has nothing on it, and all the usual runway markings. So the commercial terminals with all the big planes we'll see over on the left, and it looks like they have something that looks like a little helipad over on the right, so that's what we'll do is come into that one. Then we'll put her down, take another look at little nav map real quick, take a closer up look at some of this stuff, and that'll be a wrap. As far as where we go next, we are still waiting for one more recommendation for a user or member recommended flight. If you got a spot we just got to check out, you can hop on our Discord server if you want. There's a section for recommending flights on there. That will be linked in the video description. Or if you just want to post a comment in YouTube, I look at all those and moderate all of them. So if you're a jerk, if you're a funny jerk, I might post it anyway, but if not, don't waste your time. But if you want to recommend a flight, even an area is fine. If it's good, we'll fly it, we'll upload it. And you will be in the competition. We just need one more. The winner will get a $75 gift card to the sim vendor of your choice after we vote as a sim community, which we'll do as soon as we have that third one up here, because it's definitely been more than a quarter, but sim traffic in general has been slow, and this actually worked out really well with the hiatus I've had to take in between posts because of the flight training, because just simming in general has slowed down a lot, which is a bummer. But if we were going to have a little dry spot, I'd rather it be, well, I don't have the time to do it as much as I'd like anyway. So I don't know what's going on. Some of these planes on the left, I'm not seeing them so much now. I have that Latin VFR add-on that was like $5 that puts real live around all the planes, so you don't have to look at the default stuff. But I'm finding sometimes it's like double stacking the planes, and it was really bad last time I was out here. I don't see any this time. I'm not going to come down on the runway. I'm just going to come down. I'm going to do a Harrison Ford and do it on this taxiway on the right here. Yeah, that's where the helipad is. Yeah. I don't think I see any this time. Last time they were stacked all over each other. There's one default one over there. Looks like a big one. Maybe a 777 or something. A lot of Southwest planes, some American. And then down here on the right, we got all our GA stuff, which is also modeled and looks fantastic. And I think I've only landed this thing once, and it was probably on the India flight. So we'll see if my hover down to landing is any better than takeoff. Absolutely awesome flight, guys. All the add-ons will be linked. Load it up, take it, fly it. If you don't have as good of a card as a 590, I'm sorry to have to spoil you like this. So you might have to turn some things down just a little bit. But it's a neat area. There's also an add-on for this airport, by the way. That was the other add-on, so these runway markings look really, really nice. I wonder if I've got a little bit... I can't tell because the little nav map's not working. I must have a little bit of a crosswind because I'm having to give it a little bit of left anti-torque pedal there. I'll try to put it in. Now we're getting some stuttering because all the stuff moving around the ground. And we'll just plop her down. Got some jets over here. Looks like we got a little tail dragger over there. Beautiful. Love it. Love this time of day, too. So nice. All right. Let's see if I can get a non-leaner here. Plop her down in the middle. A non-leaner means I get the full 3 points without any of the skids touching any of the circle. We'll see. Don't. Oh, a little bit more. We got a little further. If I touch, I got to land it. So I got to stay without touching. There we go. How's that? Okay, get it down. Oh, that was a little hard, but yes. Oh, that's much bigger than it. That's way bigger. Boy, it seemed a lot smaller when I come in. Okay, so Let's just leave that as it is. I can probably just shut the fuel off, and then we'll check out the little nav map real quick. Come all the way down. There you go. Okay, don't know what's up with my head tracker. I may need to adjust the little sensor up there on top of my screen. Alright, so we left from up here above the Queen Mary. There she is in all of her glory. Looked fantastic. Again, this cruise ship was not out there, not docked in. Yeah, that's what that thing is. That breast-shaped building was the cruise terminal. They got a lot of cruise terminals out here. And here's that spot where the heliport is. So if you put the add-on in, this spot will be touched up. Again, if you take off from here, there'll be a couple things that are floating around, but it looks great from the air. And while I'm thinking about it, let me show you, and I didn't really draw attention to it, but you can obviously get a sense of what the sides of this would look like from this overhead view. Looks totally like a default building. In fact, the footprint really isn't right. It just looks like a crescent-shaped default building. So weird. You can see all this stuff here, but that's obviously wrong. Everything else is good. This Lions Lighthouse, which I forgot to mention, looks pretty good. A little bit angular looking. And while we're here, before we jump back over to the Iowa and all that, here's the top of that, and you can just, so this would be North America here, here's Central America, there's Florida, you can barely see the outline of South America, and really can't see anything else. So that was the Long Beach Arena, and this is the one that has, it's 116,000 square feet of murals going around this thing. One guy did all of it. Pretty impressive. Alright, let's get back out here. Look at this port, just insane. So there is the Lane Victory, and you know what, I'm kind of thinking that it was moved a little bit further down here. I felt like it was like right at the end of this pier, but that is the only ship out here, and was the only ship out here in the sim, so that's got to be it. And it looks like this is some kind of little go-kart track or something they made. Look at that. Out of a parking lot. Maybe they're using, oh, look at that. They might be using that for like police training or driver's ed or something. Wait a minute. Those look like airport markings. Surely that's not for taxiing practice with very small airplanes, which would probably be a good idea. And then here's the sunken city. So there's some of the foundations, and you can, let's see how close, that's as close as we can get. The resolution's not going to get any better. But if you look at pictures from the ground, you can see up on tops of some of these little pillars, they still have just like a little foundation just sitting on there that didn't slide into the ocean. They said that before the whole thing went into the water, I don't know if it was for several weeks or days or months, but they were losing 11 inches a day. And they said it's mostly stabilized now, and people are complaining that they want to be allowed to go back in here. But they said you can crawl through that fence pretty easily if you want to sneak on there, and they're not enforcing fines either, apparently. I don't know what's up with this Korean friendship bell. You really couldn't see much of it in the sim, so I didn't draw attention to it, but that appears to be a landmark of some significance out here. And then here's where the Fort MacArthur Museum was. And you could even see, I don't know if you caught it or not, right here you can see that little tunnel going into it, and man, would I love to see what they got inside that tunnel. Well, they still do have a Coast Guard station out here, but this whole area, and it looks like this is still part of Fort MacArthur out here, because you can see it's called Fort MacArthur. But I think originally all of that was part of the fort. Very cool. And then here's the Iowa. That's what she really looks like. I have never been on a battleship museum. I would love to do that. I wonder where the closest one is to us. I gotta find out and go check it out. Well, pretty soon, maybe I'll be able to fly out there. There's all those bridges that look just great. Thank you, the White Arcades, for that. Okay, came back over here. We saw the arena already. And then here is the airport where the flight school originally was. Obviously quite a bit bigger than that now. And even though they do have 5 runways out here, they pale in comparison as far as traffic goes to LAX, which is out here. That's the big boy. Just check out those terminals. Very, very busy. And then here is that racetrack, which you can see looks just like it did in the sim. There's a little grandstand area. Look at that. That's the only parking they have, unless these are parking garages. And then the pyramid, which, there it is right there. Let's check that out real quick. Walter Pyramid. There it is. Well, that's not a very big campus, is it? Well, it kind of comes down here. No, it's a pretty good size. I don't know how many students they have there, but they have a medical school out there too. All right, that's pretty good size. But no football stadium. Not like there's any shortage of stadiums out here. And then we came out to the Berry Farm. So there's Soak City, which, I mean, for what it was in the sim, you could definitely tell what it was because you could see the wave pool. I didn't really catch any of the slides, but those are probably modeled pretty well. You can see the lazy river. But this is where all the action was at the Berry Farm. How cool is that? Really, really great. Timber Mountain Log Ride. So that's what that thing was. You could see kind of cutting in and out of that. And it's hard to tell where the towers are, so that must be the big tower thing that had the American flag on it, the Sky Cabin. And then there was that huge one over here somewhere, which it's kind of hard to tell where that is looking down on top of it. I don't think that's it. Maybe that was a later edition. But that was awesome. Great, great job on that. White Arcades. And then here's Disneyland. 500 acres. So when I was trying to kind of size up the Magic Kingdom, it looks like you could probably fit all of the Magic Kingdom just in this area right here. But it's a fifth of the size of this, so maybe it's even smaller than that, which again just really blew my mind. 500 acres. And if you want to try to find the castle, there's that sombrero looking thing, which has got to be the merry-go-round, which is about the same spot as the merry-go-round is in the Magic Kingdom. There it is. You can barely even see it here on the satellite map. Oh, the Tomorrowland Lagoon. This is where they had the 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea, which may have been the worst ride ever. Now it's a Little Mermaid ride, but man, was that an awful ride. I got to ride that before they shut it down. Terrible. Not even cool from like a vintage standpoint. There's Angel Stadium, which was right on the money. Looked fantastic. So good. And then there's the big A sign out there. Let's see what this thing's called. We'll just find out right now. Regional Transport Center, huh? So is it like a bus thing? It's got to be a bus thing, although I don't see any buses going in and out. That's interesting. Makes sense. And then there's the Honda Center there. And then we came down here. Let's check out the blimp area. And then we'll be done. So that's the one that burned down right there, which is no longer there. You can just see the foundation of it. But on the Google Maps, if you check them out, they're starting to build all this stuff up out here. So I would bet by the next iteration of these maps, unless they do something to protect this one, they'll both be gone. Let's see if we can just measure that real quick. Just for the fun of it. So 1,000 feet, over 1,000 feet long. That's pretty cool. Really cool. And then we came into old John. So here's where Harrison Ford came in. So if you watch the video, which again will be linked, he's coming in this way. It was a left-hand pattern, so he was coming up this way, came down over here, and there was a plane sitting right here that was holding short of 20 left. He just flew like right over the top of that and landed right here on runway C. And his excuse was that he couldn't see the runway because of the airplane that was waiting, and the lady in the ATC was like, well, he wasn't waiting on the runway, he was holding short. And then he said, oh, well, there was some wake turbulence from an Airbus that was coming in on the other runway, which, you know, really probably shouldn't have been a factor for 20 left, but that's what he said. And he also had, I don't know if you guys remember, he wrecked a plane. He had a vintage trainer aircraft that he wrecked on a golf course in Santa Monica in 2015 and barely survived it. Thank goodness he had all that training as Han Solo crash landing the Millennium Falcon. That probably paid off. And then there's Newport Beach down there, which is where the Duke was from. So that's it, guys. Where we go next, I don't know, but hopefully I'll be able to pick up the pace a little bit now that I'm not studying quite as hard, but eventually I'm going to have to transition to studying for my check ride. But what I think we're going to do in trying to make this efficient as we can possibly make it with me and my CFI, we're going to do a lot of work here in the sim and then go up and see if we can execute it in real life just to try to not have to spend so much money on fuel. And because he's kind of doing me a solid with all this and donating his time for me, which I am eternally grateful for, I'm really having to squeeze in at odd times. So if we're doing stuff here on the sim, and if I feel like it's interesting enough, and if you guys want to see it, I'll just record our conversation as we're doing it, and you can see the kind of stuff that we're working on, which will probably be pretty neat. But that's it for now. Learned all kinds of amazing things. As always, the city looked beautiful. Be sure to check out the add-ons. All of them were free. All of them will be included in the video description. And I cannot wait to see you all again in the skies. Later.